Good evening, and welcome to Soluble, America's Political Central. Today is October the 25th in the year of our Lord, 2023. And a young republic is still struggling with political discord. And we can only come on and give you the current situation as it is, as we see it. Speaking truth to power, bringing in facts and versus misinformation in order to solve political gridlock. Now, previously here on Soluble and on past broadcasts, we've told you that the wrinkle in politics really began with the election of former President Barack Obama, and Republicans sat on the sidelines and reluctantly went along with the Obama presidency. They tried it at every turn that they could, in the words of Senator McConnell, to make him a one-term president, but it didn't work. But it did, however, create a lot of racial discord in America, political upheaval, because Democrats pretty much stand for everyone having a fair shot at achieving the American dream, and the Republicans are totally opposite. So, it created a lot of a backlash. Now, we don't understand here at Soluble how in the Democratic Republic, the truth can be so controversial. The truth can be replaced with alternative facts. The truth can be spun. But nevertheless, if we're going to solve our political climate, if we're going to get, meaningful legislation on the books that benefits all of us as Americans, whether you're on the right or the left, then we have to find a way to bridge the gap and meet in the middle once again when it comes to compromise, because this is the American way in politics and how we've always got things done. And now 247 years in, a young republic, and we have one side of the aisle governing, with closed fists and folded arms. And so, our goal is to change that, to get Republicans on the right to extend the open hand and to govern with open arms. And if we can't achieve that, then we have to send them a message on election day in November of 2024. We have to send that message. Now, you would think that with the absence of a red wave in the midterms of 2022, that Republicans would somewhat come to their senses and realize that the majority rules, and if Democrats have 2/3 control of power when it comes to the levels of American government, then that obviously is the will of the American people, is that they want Democrats in charge in Washington. Obviously, that's the will. Now, we see, that although there wasn't a red wave during the 2022 midterms, Republicans did walk away with a slim majority in the House. And it seems as if, now we've elected another House Speaker. And we're not sure how effective it's going to be, or what to look for, in the coming days and months. We know he's a hard right MAGA Republican by his own account, by his own actions during the elections of 2020. We know that he's a hard right MAGA Republican who spearheaded a congressional effort to overturn the election, decertify the election of a duly elected president in Joseph R. Biden. Now, here's where, as Democrats, that we must realize that we have to toe the line once again. We have to show up in order to, save democracy, plain and simple. Save democracy, plain and simple. Um, here's where we take note of that at. We had Representative Emmer out of Michigan, and he was next up for as a candidate for the speakership. And you have former President Trump, who is, facing multiple indictments, has showed so much of an ability to be corrupt. Has even come out and blatantly told the vice president that he's too honest. All of this is coming out now during these investigations and during these indictments coming down. But with the Republican Party, the former president was able to call in, label Representative Emmer a rhino, and pretty much tank his nomination for the speakership. But at the same time, you don't have Republicans pushing back. You don't even have Representative Emmer to speak up, to defend himself and to defend himself doing his legal and due diligence to certify the 2022 election. To certify the 2020 election. You don't have a party or a man with a spine right here in this situation to stand up for truth and justice, to say, yes, I did vote to certify a free and fair and duly elected president in Joseph R. Biden. And, no matter what the former president says, I've done the right thing. Now I will go all out for the speakership. And if I don't make it, being that it's the will of my congressional colleagues, then I will step down. You don't get nothing of the sort here. Emmer just, he bows out ungracefully to a former president who, for whatever reason, and we stated it here before on the podcast, he's still the president of the Republican Party. And so, because he tried to do the right thing in certifying a free and fair election and playing his part with due diligence in going about seeing the peaceful transfer of power, which we've always enjoyed in this country, from one administration to the next. But because he's done the right thing, the former president, he goes on Truth Social or, whatever social network that he enjoys, putting out these false facts, these falsehoods, and these political controversies. He went on and was able to label Representative Emmer, a rhino. And, this is what should, really make our antennas go up as Democrats, to really be paying attention that here you have a former president disgraced by all accounts, except for his own. The former president has no shame. He has no respect for democracy or love of country that would make him say, I am a big distraction. I have done things that are unbecoming of President of the United States. I have done things that have disqualified me, not by any legal means, but by means of just common decency, honesty, and integrity in politics. I have disqualified myself based on those grounds, along those lines. And so, at this particular time, I'm going to bow out. I'm not going to seek re-election. I'm not going to seek the nomination for the Republican Party. None of this you've heard, although we should have. So as Democrats, what other choice do we have? What other, path of recourse do we have but a due diligence and an obligation to fight for democracy here, to go all out on election day to try and, make every attempt possible to keep the former president out of the Oval Office once again. And so here we have it now. We have Speaker Mike Johnson, someone who tried wholeheartedly to, overturn a free and fair election. And he's the man. He's the man. Speaker McCarthy is out. And they went even further to the right, to the rogue right, in electing Congressman Mike Johnson as Speaker of the House. And so at the end of the day, nothing has changed for us as Democrats. We have a democracy to save. And at the same time, we have to walk and chew gum because, the American people have needs. They're looking at government officials to do everything that they can to make their lives better and to keep a functioning democracy alive and well. Now, one thing that should go a long ways in telling us as Democrats and those common sense Republicans and our independents who are paying attention. The former president does nothing to strengthen our democracy in the eyes of our foes, in the eyes of those countries who want to see democracy fail so that they can further legitimize authoritarianism and total rule over people without free and fair elections. Countries like China, Russia, they would love nothing more than to see democracy fail. And, at this point in time, it seems as if the former president is going all out to, assist them, to legitimize the conversation that they're having with other rogue regimes. When they're saying, look, see what's going on in America, see what's happening. It doesn't work. Democracy is not something that works. It's a failed experiment that's propped up by the American public. It's a phony. It's a sham. The former president is going all out with this assistance and, provoking this kind of thought with our foreign adversaries. But yet and still, he is, after multiple indictments, people from Mugshotville, from the mugshot pool are copping guilty pleas. You've seen, Attorney Jenna Ellis. You've seen Sidney Powell. You've seen Chesbrough. You've seen Mark Meadows. Some of the leading dominoes are starting to fall now. But yet and still, the former president, still has a stranglehold, if you will, on the Republican Party to be able to influence the speakership, to be able to influence what goes on in the Republican Party. And it's more than likely going to be slanted towards corruption, half-truths, things that are made up in order to do what? Confuse you, the American voter. That's what it's all about here, ladies and gentlemen. So Democrats who won't be deterred, who won't be, misled, it's in our hands. And, we know this because we voted him out once. We can definitely do it again. And also it's in our hands because had we turned out in mass numbers, and this is revisionist history, this is water under the bridge, so to speak. But we have to look at, how we got here. And how we got to this point with such a volatile situation in politics today is not because we voted. And now this is how democracy works after a massive turnout. We've got here because we failed to turn out in large numbers in 2015 for Senator Clinton. We failed to turn out in large numbers. Of course, there was some technology going on. Of course, there were things that were, said and being done to influence the vote or to discourage you from voting. Remember, FBI Director Comey in the 11th hour coming forth to state that, hold up a minute, I found something else. And at that particular point in time, there were people like me. I was just getting ready to insert my ballot into the scanner. I was just getting ready to insert my ballot into the scanner to be counted as a vote for Senator Hillary Rodham Clinton for president of the United States of America. Now, when former FBI Director Comey said, hold up, I did pause. But after that brief pause, I cast my vote in the scanner. But you have to realize, Democrats, listen to me closer. We have to realize that at that 11th hour, when FBI Director Comey came forward and made that statement, there was a lot of voters who, like myself, had filled out a ballot and they were approaching the scanner to have their vote counted. That changed their mind. That went back in and did something different, or just didn't cast a ballot altogether for either candidate. And so we have to take a long look in the mirror at ourselves as Democrats, voting in this country for what we see as the best way forward, to never be duped in this way again. This is the playbook, and it hasn't changed. It won't change. And as you see from Hillary's emails, after she was, made to be less than nothing in politics, made to be irrelevant by these false accusations with emails, we move forward to next up for the job, Joseph R. Biden. He's a walking gaff machine. We welcome him to run. The way he puts his foot in his mouth, this is going to be an easy win for former President Trump. And it wasn't. You ignored the noise as Democrats. You realized what the former president, Donald J. Trump, was doing to the country. And you came out in mass and you voted for a change. So what changed on the right? From Senator Clinton's emails to Joseph R. Biden's gaffes, the walking gaff machine that he was. Now it's the Biden crime family. This is like someone sitting down and getting ready to write a nonfiction book. Once upon a time, there was a president in this country called America named Joseph R. Biden. That's what this is. This is a nonfiction story that can't seem to gain traction because there are no truths to it. And so what we see is what we get here. We as Democrats, while we're voting in mass, we can sit patiently by, and only when we're voting in mass. We can also sit patiently by and wait and watch to see if Republican politics are going to change. Now, we can't not vote. We can't sit idly by and not vote and watch and wait. That would be, a detriment to the country. That would pretty much go towards propelling a possible downfall or dooming of democracy. So that should be, our strategy, to register to vote, to get as many Democrats and independents registered as we possibly can, and those reluctant Republicans who will come along, because there's nothing here on the right. As I said, with the new speakership, it's even further rogue right than what McCarthy was. It's even further rogue right. And, you also have, during this time of crisis in the House, where we didn't have a speaker, you have, of all things, of all people who could be responsible for what's going on in the Republican Party, here you have a party with a slim majority. And does the buck stop with them? Do they take responsibility for what's going on in the House? No. They want to bring, it never fails to bring in the Democrats as culprits also, or as the leading culprit. As absurd as that sounds, as a leading culprit as to why the House is in turmoil and the speakership is in turmoil as it is. Even though we know, what propelled Congressman Gates to take this action. So how can we look at it and say that, Democrats are responsible for the mess that went on in the House, when the Democrats just simply want someone who is willing to cooperate? How could they be responsible for the former speaker's ouster when he has cooperated with the continuing resolution to keep government open, to work with Democrats to pass the spending bill, to keep government open. Why would Democrats, want to be in the thick of it or put themselves in a position where they're responsible now for the chaos in the House, a House that's controlled by a Republican majority? And so, as Democrats, it should be alarming to us that this political party wants to be in charge of government. They're running to be in charge, but at the same time, where they have a majority and where they are in charge, they're blaming Democrats for all their failures and shortcomings. And the disarray that has become the Republican Party. Now, as we've stated here, it's soluble. These two parties have two different ideals. And we, as American voters, we're charged with looking at both sets of ideals from each party and deciding, what works best for us, not as Americans or as a group. We vote as individuals. You have individuals who are voting as Democrats. You have individuals voting as Republicans. So this is not something that is, forced upon us by a group of people, whereas we have no choice. The more Democratic votes we get, the more we stay in control. Now, I would never fail to mention that we have a 90-something plus percentile of African American voters, 90-something plus percentile of African American voters who vote in the Democrat Party. That's a lot of leverage there. And as long as we hold that percentile, we feel safe that, the government will have a balanced approach. No matter what happens on the right, we will possibly, win. In all likelihood, we will win if we get those numbers up. And we've seen, by example, what happened in 2015, 2016, when we don't show up, when we don't come out in large numbers. Now, one thing you will never hear us doing here at Soluble is complaining about the current political situation. We always feel as if we could take an approach that helps solve by, eye-opening, by speaking truth to power, by bringing forth, truth and facts versus misinformation, fake news, or alternative facts. And so we are participants in the process here at Soluble. So there's no time to complain. We're taking all of our effort and all of our power, the power of the voice, the power of the podcast, the power of word of mouth, and putting it out to the people to go out on election day and cast a vote. Now, as far as that 90-something plus percentile of African Americans who are voting Democrat, the days are gone. And Democrats, please listen to me real carefully here, especially that 90-something plus percentile. The days are gone. And they left with the election of former President Barack Obama. But the days are gone where we can vote less and complain more. And that's the current situation that we found ourselves in due to the results of past elections and lack of turnout. And so, don't put yourself into that negative minority, if you will, of finger pointing, complaining about what's going on when Republicans get in office with the majority and they start putting laws on the books that makes the American dream seem like an American nightmare, or makes the American dream seem like something that is just that, a dream. It's not attainable. You can't reach it. You can't achieve it. That's the way it's going to be if we don't get our numbers up. And so, please understand this as Democratic voters. If you don't like your current situation, and it could be where you don't like your current situation with Democratic leadership. And we're not trying to discourage or encourage votes for Republican politicians. If we're discouraging it, it's only along the lines of trying to save the Republic, because our Republican colleagues have went so far rogue right. This is the only reason why we would be discouraging a vote for Republican politics. And so it's up to us. The ball is in our court. It's not in Republican hands. It's in the hands of each and all American voters to show up, cast a ballot, and they always, the saying goes that the second time around is better. So here we are. No time to get discouraged, no time to become disillusioned. The system does work. The system does work when we go out and vote. And the proof is in the pudding, because the former president is no longer in office to be a threat to democracy, which by all accounts from, hush mouth Republicans, Democrats, world leaders abroad know this. Know that for a fact, the former president, Donald J. Trump, is a threat to democracy. And so let's let complaining, finger pointing, as Democrats, as registered Democrats who are ready to go out, with sword and shield on election day in order to keep democracy moving forward, not at a standstill, not going backwards, because that is, pretty much where the MAGA movement was trying to take the country. Stop it dead in its tracks from progressing, as it relates to race relations in the country, social unrest in the country. That's what it was geared toward disrupting. But we stopped it. And so, a MAGA movement would sadly, and regrettably, be great for America in, let's say, the 1850s, the 1920s even. This would probably have been a great movement for Republicans at that point in time. But here we are, 247 years in to a young republic. 247 years in. And the MAGA movement of today, where things stand at, not just in America, but in the world. This MAGA movement is something like trying to take a square peg and put it in a round hole. Now, we all know it doesn't fit. We all know it doesn't fit. No matter which way you turn it, try to twist it, try to tilt it or whatever. It doesn't fit. But yet and still, you have Republican politicians who are going to the tailor, so to speak, on a regular basis. The tailor of politics, to try to trim this MAGA movement, to try to cut it, to try to snip it over there, to try to hem it up and take it up over here, to make it fit into 2023 modern day America. And so the speaker gavel has been taken from former Speaker McCarthy and given to the current speaker we have now in Mac Johnson. Totally approved by the president. And so Democrats, this is where we stand. This is where we stand. And we have to realize that if we're not turning out in the appropriate numbers, if we don't have our numbers out on election day, then we're partially responsible for this mess, because it can easily be voted out. Easily. We as Democrats have to realize that from November of 2020 up until now, we have to believe, in common sense Americans, that the former president, Donald J. Trump, hasn't picked up more votes based on his actions, based on his deeds since November 2020. We have to understand that. There's no way, and we have to believe this in our hearts, that common sense, democracy, freedom-loving Americans have increased their numbers in the Republican circles, lining up, circling the wagons around a dead MAGA movement, and they're ready in November of 2024 to bring it to life again. But at the same time, it's no time for us to get complacent. It's no time for us to rest on our laurels. This democracy that we live in and that we work and serve in, it comes up for vote every so often. And so, we have to be ready to play our part. Of course, the name of the game for Republican politicians is to wear them down, mislead them, instill so much fear in them till, they'll have no other choice but to vote for us or not vote at all. It's part of the playbook. And we've said it time and time again. But nothing, puts us at ease. And nothing, causes us to be more rested assured that democracy will prevail than what, American government has to offer in the form of free and fair elections. Now, we're looking, we're very observant here at Soluble, and as of right now at this moment, we don't understand. We have no answers for our listeners, our viewers, or the American public in general as to why Republican politicians refuse to cut ties and break ranks with the former president. We have no idea. We've never seen nothing in this cult-like manner when it comes to a presidential candidate that is so unethical and so unbecoming of what it takes to be president of the United States of America. We've seen this kind of fandom, this kind of political infatuation with someone of a Ronald Reagan nature, and we can understand it. We can understand it. A former Hollywood actor. We don't have information right here as to whether, the former President Reagan served in any kind of, military regards, but a former Hollywood actor, American golden boy, championing states' rights, even if, we don't agree with it on the left, but we can understand the craze and infatuation with a man educated, smooth with his words, knowing how to deliver a passionate speech to his followers with a vision and a view for what America should be going as that shiny city on a hill. But this, we have here we are in this day and time, 247 years in, some 20, 30, some 30 something odd years after Reagan. And we have this, this failed, doomed politician, Donald J. Trump. And, one bad apple has spoiled the whole bunch, as we've stated before. We have, another spending resolution that's coming up on November the 17th. Something that Republicans and Democrats need to work together on in order to keep government open once again. The nation debt is a serious issue. So as Democrats, you know, there was a time where the Republican Party hadn't taken this hard turn to the right, where we may have been able to say that, President William Jefferson Clinton is leaving office. And we know that, here comes George W. Bush. He's running against the current vice president and Vice President Gore. And there was a time when we could look at something like that and say, well, it's not, I'm not going to really, get up off the sofa. I'm not going to sit on the edge of my seat and really pay attention to what's being said here because, there's not too much of a difference here. In a Democratic ideal and a Republican ideal as for what's best for America. I like what George W. has to say. I like what the Vice President Gore has to say. And so even though they're different, they're more similar than they are different. That could be said. That could easily have been said and thought, been the thinking of the general public going into the elections of the year 2000. But here we are, some 20-something years later, and nothing could be said of the same nature. You have, on the left, you have Joseph R. Biden, who is current resident in the Oval Office, leading the country as commander-in-chief. And here on the right, you have former President Donald J. Trump under multiple indictment, playing fast and loose with classified documents, maybe revealing nuclear sub-secrets to his billionaire pals in order to impress them for what? To possibly get campaign donations? But at the end of the day, we're far apart now. This is more, separated than it is as a togetherness, where we can say that, they're so close along ideological lines that even though I'm going to vote for Joseph R. Biden to, give him another 4 years, it's not really a big deal if I don't vote because they're both along, close ideological lines on what's best for America. That's not the case here. That's not the case anymore. The former president, cares nothing about honesty, integrity in government. He only cares about the Trump name and brand. And, why the Republican voters are so entrenched and enamored with such a flawed individual, we're dumbfounded. I must confess here at Soluble, we're dumbfounded, for the sake of democracy. Now, we don't expect Republican voters, to abandon, their beliefs and the reason why they stand behind Republican politicians. But what is this? What is this that you have? You have a leading nominee right now who can't win, who hasn't won in a long time, who the Republican Party and for Republican politicians had the power to impeach so that we wouldn't be here now today. But in spite of all the ways that the Republican, this former president has misled the country, he can still weigh in on a House candidate for speakership and take his speakership. He still has that kind of sway, that kind of pull in the Republican Party. Now picture this. You have a former president who's under multiple indictments for criminal activity, for wrongdoing. But yet he can take a more honorable man, someone who is not under multiple indictment or facing the things that the former president is facing, in Congressman Emmer, and go on Truth Social or any of his other, social media accounts and begin to denounce this man. And what does Representative Emmer do? He doesn't have a spine to stand up for the American people, for American democracy, or for the principles of democracy. He bows out ungracefully. He bows out in a cowardly fashion. it would be, good, if not great, if we see a parting shot across the bow back at the former president. Because of all people who would have something negative to say about a speakership where Representative Emmer is controlling the gavel. The former president is not the one. He's not the one. He's been twice impeached. He's under multiple indictments. Here you have a former president who had an administration of actors. Is that what we really need at a time where, there's so much to be done? Democracy to be protected. At a time where we should be trying to, encourage more Americans to get involved with government. We want, American citizens to believe that our politicians are actually going to Washington to do the job that we set them up for. So why are we listening here? Why are we giving the former president this kind of platform still? Or might I say better yet, why are the Republican politicians doing this? And so if they don't have the backbone, if you will, the courage to stand up to a disgraced, unethical former president who loves to deal in falsehoods more than the truth, why they can't stand up and take a stand for democracy, at this point in time, we're baffled, we're dumbfounded. But nevertheless, we're here at Soluble to bring all this truth to bear. Bring facts to where there may be falsehoods. To try to keep you, the American people, in the loop, in the know of what's really going on. We've never seen anything like this before. But here we are the second time around. And as I said, as the saying goes, the second time around should be better than the first time. Meaning we can beat him even worse than we did, beat him even better than we did the first time. If I'm not mistaken, I think the 2020 election went down with President Biden coming out with some 3 million plus more votes than former President Trump did. We have to make it 4 million now, 5 million if possible. Get the facts, know the facts. And you're not going to just get them by, listening to the news media. You have to do your own research. You have to do your own reading to understand and realize that the former president and the Republican Party is trying to govern a modern day 2023 America with something out of a textbook Dixiecrat Republican playbook of 1949. And that's where, it comes into play where we say they're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. America's moved on. The world has moved on. And so you have a party here that is, they're grasping, they're struggling, they're flailing. At a time when we need leadership. We have Republicans with a majority in the House. What are you going to do with it to help the American people? The election is over now. The election is over. It was over, 2 years ago, the midterms, and the American people have spoken. So what kind of governorship, what kind of governance are you going to give us with this majority that you have? Well, what you see is what you get. Speaker McCarthy expects, as you were, former Speaker McCarthy would expect the Democrats to bail him out, to save his speakership. But if the Democratic Conference or the Democratic Party comes to the former speaker and says, okay, we will save you, we will go all out to help save the speakership on your behalf, but drop in these fruitless investigations, in these investigations into nowhere, as far as trying to impeach the president. What does McCarthy give him? Nothing. He won't give them that. He can't guarantee or promise them that, which would be the right thing to do, because by all leading witness accounts, there is nothing there. We're not there to the point where there's evidence to say that Joseph R. Biden is complicit or is a ringleader in the Biden crime family, and therefore he's unfit for office based on the evidence that we're putting forward here. And nothing has changed from the time of the 2020 elections until now. You see it. Then you have, figures like Sidney Powell, Rudy Giuliani, these other people who are pleading guilty now, coming out strong in the president's corner. The election was stolen, making up these falsehoods and lies about a free and fair election. Now, here you have, fast forward some almost 4 years later, they're still making things up without evidence. Oh, it's the Biden crime family. And here's what we have to understand, to my fellow Democrats and those common sense independents and Republicans. We've never in this country tried, prosecuted, and or publicly persecuted without sufficient evidence. Without sufficient evidence of said crime or wrongdoing. And yet, nothing has changed. During the election of 2020, the election is stolen. Dead people are voting. People are voting twice. They're stuffing ballots. They're throwing away ballots with no evidence. With no evidence. Former, respected lawyer Rudy Giuliani has come forward during the 2020 election and said something to the effect that they're stuffing ballots, or they're doing these things with ballots like they were vials of heroin. Outlandish claims, outlandish statements that at the end of the day, when it was time for the rubber to meet the road, there was no evidence of it. And so here we are. Going into another election where we may be comfortable now in our jobs, in our homes, in our savings. We may be comfortable with, living with a current social order. Gas prices are down. The jobs reports looks good. The president is a stopgap to any foreign adversary who would want to try to invade a free and peaceful nation. He's putting all the mechanisms in place to keep this going. But as I said, there's no time to rest or get comfortable. Because all of this could go away in the blink of an eye. In the blink of an eye, in November of 2024, this could all disappear. With a puff of smoke. And Republicans are all of a sudden in power again. This is not a tit for a tat, some kind of banana republic way of governing that we serve in. But this is what's happening with the Republican Party. Democrats, have no other choice, but because of the former president's actions, but to file impeachment proceedings. Because the president is run amok. He's run amok. He's told himself that he could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue, shoot somebody, and his poll numbers wouldn't change. Now, while that may have been true, while by all accounts that may have been true, because we've seen all the things that the former president has done the lows that he's went to, and his numbers haven't changed. But some kind of way, the former president became so warped and corrupt in his thinking that he began to think that, I could do things that are not law abiding and still not be prosecuted. This was something that no one told the former president, no one, even the great Steve Bannon, Roger Stone, no one pointed to a blueprint or a roadmap for the president to take these kind of criminal actions, and he couldn't be prosecuted. This was something that the president conjured up in his own mind. This is something that the former president conjured up in his own mind. And so here we are, with the former president playing fast and loose, with of all things, classified documents. And for all the disruption and the things that are unbecoming of a president of the United States of America, of all these things that are happening, while they're happening, Russia and China is loving it. And so what kind of president, for the United States of America would pride himself or look the other way while he's doing things that our foreign adversaries are enjoying? Is that good for democracy? Is that good for the future of freedom-loving people all around the world? No. But who it is good for is the former president himself as one individual. One individual, not looking out for we the people. And so, this is the current state of being. We have a speaker now, albeit, a new speaker who is further right than the former speaker who was just deposed or ousted. He's further right. And this is what, the Republicans welcome. Someone who is more MAGA. Even though MAGA hasn't had a substantial victory since 2015, 2016. And so, we know as Democrats what we have to do. We have work to do here. And as I've stated, to that 90-something plus percentile, African Americans who are holding the line for the Democratic Party, no, our position here at Solid is not that the Democratic Party has all the answers for the problems that are plaguing the African American community here in America. Irregardless of what state you're in, irregardless of what side of the country you live on. We're not saying that the Democratic Party has the answers, but you have seats at the table. Lest we forget, we have seats at the table. And so this is why it's very important for us to rock the vote for the Democratic Party, for the sake of the Republic, for the sake of the future of democracy and mankind, humankind in general. When we have seats at the table, then we can speak truth to power. And we can right the ship where the ship has went wrong or went into choppy waters when it comes to so-called minorities, women's rights, protections for children. We can right the ship with these seats we have at the table. Unlike the Republican Party, where we have little to no sway. We see Senator Scott in the polls. We see where he's at. We see how he's getting called on at the debates, how often he's getting called on. He's practically looked over. And so this is what you always have in the Republican Party. The party of the remade party of out of a Dixiecrat revolt, still made in the image of the late Strom Thurmond today, still made in his image. So there's nothing there. Before we go, we want to briefly touch on, what our next topic of discussion will be as far as the issues that are affecting us, the American people, when it comes to this two-party system with two different ideas on how to best govern America. We're going to, speak on education. We see that, our colleagues on the right are constantly talking about canceling the Department of Education at the federal level. So we're going to, during our next podcast, bring to light as best we can, the two different ideals here when it comes to education in America. We know that we have fallen behind somewhat significantly when it comes to other nations in reading scores, math scores. And, is this a time to do away with the Department of Education or to look at this department and see what we can do better in order to, pull somewhat even or if not ahead when it comes to other nations, and as to where we rank now in scores of math, reading, etc. Now, one of the things that we feel like here at Soluble that we really can do first and foremost is to increase teacher pay. Is to show up teacher pay, to bring more professionals into the trade, in order to teach our children who are going to be leaders in the future. Teachers play a very important role. And, the pay scale is pathetic. And we know that we can do more on the Democratic side. Another important reason, too, that we have to bum rush the polls in 2024. So that will be our next issue, topic of discussion for, our viewers and listeners going into the 2024 election. The ideal, way that we should be educated from a Republican point of view and the ideal way that we should be educated from a Democrat point of view. Now, before we close tonight, we want to briefly again touch on, the situation in the Middle East. Democrats, we have to more than ever because we're dealing with human lives here on both sides. On both sides. We condemn both sides for the killing, the deaths and maiming that is being suffered by, children is unimaginable. And it should be something that, stirs anger in the hearts of anyone with a conscience. Now, our position here at Soluble is unchanged. A two-state solution is better than one war. A two-state solution is better than one war. And, we have to, as Democrats, leading in government, having these seats at the table, we have to speak truth to power here. We have to speak truth to power. Now, the biasness in this situation is evident. We know that America's position is to protect Israel. And Israel has a right to defend itself. But we have to question, at the same time when we're making that statement that, Israel has a right to defend itself. We're not questioning that. But at the same time, what about the Palestinians? We can't say that can we humanly, consciously, with a conscience that where we can sleep, a conscience that we can rest on, say that Israeli lives are more valuable than Palestinian lives. We wouldn't be doing our due diligence as Democrats serving in government to keep this same approach, to keep this same position. I mean, we're looking at the Hamas terrorists, and that's pretty much how it is being stated in American politics by Democrats and Republicans alike. But as Democrats who desire the truth, going forward into a new age in America, where we have these seats at the table, that gives us a voice. We can't, if we're going to, keeping it fair, keeping it honest, and keeping in mind that human life is valuable, no matter, if it's an Israeli life or if it's a Palestinian life. Human life is valuable. But we see biasness in American government when we see, when they refer to Hamas, it's the Hamas terrorists. Okay, by the same token, you've had negotiations. You've had proposals for a two-state solution. Yet, our Israeli partners are still building settlements on disputed territory. So at best, if we're not going to be biased, then we can, for example, say that the Hamas terrorists have went and attacked the Israeli land grabbers. If this is in fact what the Israelis are doing, or are they building disputed settlements on disputed territory? We have 2.45 million people living in a small confined space, which has been described as the world's largest open air prison. We can do better. We can do better. Now, we want peace on both sides. That's our position here at Soluble. But you can only push a freedom-loving people so far. You can only push a people who feel like they have been raped and robbed of their land, of their ancestral heritage, and they're not going to fight back. It would be unwise of us, not looking at it from a realistic point of view, for us to think that the Palestinians are not going to push back. Now, if the Israelis have the power, if they have the might, go in with the ground forces. This relentless bombing campaign that is killing innocent civilians is not right. And we as Democrats, we have to stand up and stand in the gap for righteousness, no matter how unpopular it may be, with our colleagues on the right and their point of view. We can't say that it's wrong for the Hamas terrorists to go into Israel and kill innocent people, but it's okay and it's right for Israel to drop bombs, killing innocent Palestinian women and children. This does nothing for the cause. This does nothing to quell the violence. This only inflames tensions in the region. So we are urging, our government, and we're asking our Democratic, politicians, Democratic voters to really push hard for this two-state solution, where both parties come to the table in agreement. The Palestinians have been pushed to this point. Like it or not, Hamas is the military defense for the Palestinian people. Every freedom-loving nation has a military defense. They can count on to say, if we're being infringed upon, if we're being attacked, if we're being treated unfairly, or if we're being pushed into a situation where we're suffering, we're starving, we're disease-ridden, there's not enough food to go around, then we're going to rely on our military defense to make lives better for us, to take us out from under this strong arm of oppressive treatment. And that's what Hamas is doing for the Palestinian people. No more, no less. Now, we may not like their tactics. We may not approve of their methods. But they are the military wing, and respectfully so, for the Palestinian people. Or else who would be their voice? Where would they have defense? And so it's always been where you have a nation of people with an armed military ready to defend said nation from any and all mistreatment from any other nation or from any other people or groups of people. I mean, look, the same thing that we have our Israeli counterparts saying today. We're going to crush Hamas. This is going to be the end of Hamas. We're going to do this once and for all. We've been hearing this since the days of Ariel Sharon and Yasser Arafat. The same thing. Ariel Sharon, a war hawk. May he rest in peace. By all accounts, a war hawk who had little to no desire to negotiate with the Palestinian people. Fast forward today. We have Netanyahu. flipping the judicial system to its own political gain. And by a lot of accounts, the Israeli people are against what's happening. We've seen the large demonstrations, the large protests against this changing of the judicial system for political gain. And at the same time, we've seen those of us who have lived long enough and are old enough to remember and know, from Ariel Sharon to Netanyahu right now, it's been the same approach. And so our position here at Soluble is that we don't expect the people of Israel to be in a position where they can live safely amongst their Muslim neighbors, unless they all come to the table of brotherhood and peace in sincerity in order to come up with a peaceful solution that stops the killing. We're condemning this relentless bombing campaign that's happening in the Gaza Strip. Our position here at Soluble is that every time a bomb falls, it mostly affects the Palestinian civilian population, and it does nothing to decimate Hamas. And so, first and foremost, if you're serious about taking Hamas out or this, that, and the third, you will not inflame tensions in the region. Because what's happening now with this relentless bombing campaign, it is helping Hamas to recruit. It's giving Hamas credibility, more power, more support for military aggression. It's not lessening it. It's not lessening it. And so from Ariel Sharon to now Netanyahu, the same approach, the same bloodshed, the same civil unrest, the same violations, where we have new settlements being sprung up in disputed territory. And as I said, we don't have American politicians, whether they be on the right or left, to call the Israelis out. I mean, we don't condone name calling here at Soluble. And, it's something that we really need to work on here in America. But if we're going to have, if on one side we're going to have the Hamas terrorists, then on the other side we have to have the Israeli land grabbers. We have to have the Israeli treaty violators. We have to have the Israeli non-negotiators. And so, whatever it takes to stop the bloodshed here, as I said, a two-state solution is better than one war. And there has to be serious negotiation here. We don't expect, opposition here at Soluble is that we don't expect the Palestinian people to roll over, lay down, while they're being occupied, while their land is being taken, and not try to do anything about it. We don't expect, the powers that be, whether they be in America, whether they be in England, to be able to go over into the heart of a region, a region that is surrounded by, people of a Muslim faith and a Muslim belief, and to be able to prop up a Jewish state, a Jewish Christian state, or whatever, the religious practice may be, and have it successfully prevail amongst all of its Muslim neighbors, while it is, committing all these atrocities and all of these violations that are taking place. And when it comes to the Israelis, the Israeli people see it. As I said, they've already demonstrated against it. So if we really want, peace in the Middle East, we have to bring both parties to the table in honest sincerity. On one hand, you have Israelis saying that the Palestinians will never accept the Jewish state. They believe that all Jews should be dead and or killed. And we understand that. We're not disputing that may or may not be the position of the Hamas militant wing of the Palestinian people. But when we come to the table of negotiation, hammer out a plan for a two-state solution, then Hamas has no other choice but to comply or know that the world is against them. But we know right here now today, on this date, October the 25th, in the year of our Lord 2023, the relentless bombing campaign in Gaza, on the Gaza Strip, does nothing to diminish Hamas, to make Hamas disappear, to exterminate Hamas. This is killing Israelis. This is mass murder of Palestinian women and children and innocent civilians. And so our position is that, here we have the Israelis, owning and or attempting to own this Middle East region, surrounded by Jerusalem, or with Jerusalem in the midst of play. If you are that mighty people, if you are that powerful people, why do you have to kill innocent women and children, innocent civilians? Is there not another way that you can go toe to toe with Hamas and eliminate them? And if it is, we suggest that you take that high road, because this is definitely the low road here. To see innocent children suffering day in and day out on TV, and with Israel asserting that this bombing campaign is taking out all of Hamas's infrastructure, all of their capabilities. The places that we're bombing has everything to do with Hamas. No, it does not. It does not. And so we must speak truth to power. As I said, from Ariel Sharon to now Netanyahu, nothing has changed and nothing will change. The Palestinian people will resist because their land has been taken, their land has been occupied, and they will continue to resist with every fiber of their being, and rightfully so. It's what freedom-loving nations all around the world have done throughout the history of mankind. When something that they feel is rightfully theirs is being taken away. So instead of the powers that be, whether it be in America, whether it be in England, coming into this region and trying to prop up a Jewish state amongst thousands, if not millions, of Muslims, we can't take a one-sided approach here, or a might makes right approach. That is why tensions have been constantly inflamed throughout the region from its inception to now. This is why tensions are constantly being inflamed throughout the region. So we need a different approach, a two-state solution that holds Israel's feet to the fire and holds the Palestinians' people feet to the fire in order to bring about peace in the region. But there's no way, and we haven't seen it. We haven't seen peace in the region. And we're not going to see it, because it's not possible for America and or England or any other powers that be to prop up a Jewish Christian state in the middle of Arab Muslim world, and to be able to push the Palestinian people around, to rob them, steal from them, take from them, occupy their land. And there's no pushback. So, on one side, we may have Hamas terrorists, but on the other side, we definitely should have Israeli land grabbers, Israeli land stealers, Israeli occupiers, Israeli bombers of innocent civilians. We have to tell it like it is. Israel pushes and Hamas pushes back, or the Palestinian people push back. And that's nothing out of the ordinary. There's nothing there to say that should say that we should label the Palestinians as bad and the Israelis as good. Here we have two groups of people, two groups of human beings, and bloodshed on either side is wrong. So we're encouraging our Democratic colleagues and Republicans alike to stand up for the truth, to tell it like it is, and let's try to bring peace and stability to the region. There are violations on both sides, and we have to tell it like it is. We have to tell it like it is. Because from then to now, the status quo has been, strike and retaliate in a tit for tat type manner that's caused human suffering with innocent men, women, and children, civilians on both sides. And nothing will change it unless we get, these two groups back to the bargaining table, back to the negotiating table to hammer out a two-state solution. And so, in closing, killing on either side is wrong. But the degree that the Israelis are bombing innocent civilians in the Gaza Strip is totally akin to ethnic cleansing. And it's something that we as Americans should stand up against and speak out against. For all freedom-loving countries, the Israelis being one of them. This is not the way. If Hamas is there dropping bombs, from airplanes thousands of feet up into the sky, is doing nothing to eradicate Hamas. And that's the end of a talking point here at Soluble. We thank you for joining us tonight. We encourage you to, join us on our next podcast when we will be dealing with education as a talking point, and as far as the ideal coming from two governing parties in America, as far as what is the best path forward for the future of America when it comes to education. Stay tuned. We'll be having that, discussion here soon. We thank you for joining us tonight. As always, we're coming forward to solve, and if the shoe fits for a Republican, if the shoe fits for a Democrat, we're going to make sure that they wear it. As it relates to moving democracy forward in a freedom-loving world, in a freedom-loving country. So we welcome any input, any opinion that, may be eye-opening to us here at Soluble. We're not going to solve this political gridlock, this current political climate that we find ourselves in. We're not going to solve it with more infighting, continual bickering. We're not going to solve it, with false promises, lies to the American people. Things that are made up with not any evidence to show proof of anything that is actually there that may or may not do harm to us as the American people. So stay tuned. We look forward to bringing these facts. We look forward to keeping you informed so that you can make an informed decision on election day come November 2024. And, if seeing is believing, we see what is happening right now, with the Republican Party. How far is fell from grace? And as President Biden said, it's the truth. This is not your grandfather's Republican Party. So stay tuned. We'll continue to bring facts, truth to bear as it relates to Republicans and or Democrats. When it comes to wrongdoing, when it comes to, which side of the aisle is doing what it takes to move America forward, not just for a chosen few, but for all of us as Americans. And so at the end of the day, that's our goal here at Soluble, is to bring the political opposition back closer to a place of compromise, which it has always been in American politics, in order to get things done, get problems solved for the betterment of the lives and livelihoods of everyday American people. So until the next time, this is Soluble signing off. We thank you for joining us, and we look forward to bringing you informative political happenings so that you can make an informed decision on election day come November 2024. Until the next time, this is Soluble signing off. We thank you for joining us. Good night and God bless. Thank you.